Alrighty, hello and welcome back to what is probably the final college football episode, at least for well, I guess this isn't really the regular season because it's championship week here, but this is probably the last college football episode for quite some time. I might do a little bit of a transfer portal segment down the line, but if you've been listening long enough, you know how that went just last year. It was chaos, and I didn't really highlight a whole lot of big time names. So mostly the big names, I'll talk about them. Like, Kyle McCord entered the transfer portal. I believe KJ Jefferson did that officially as well. Their transfer portal's insane. There's a bunch of kids going into it. I can't be asked to keep up with it all. We'll know whenever they actually commit somewhere whether to care about it or not. And until then, I can't be asked. I simply can't be asked. So this is probably going to be the last college football episode, fully dedicated college football episode for a little bit. Still sticking with 2 episodes a week though for the foreseeable future until the Super Bowl. Basically, we're at 2 episodes a week right now. Until further notice. We'll just, we'll be focusing more on the NFL. It'll probably be a little bit after this. Like, going into next week, I may do, like I said, a transfer portal segment on Mondays or Tuesdays, whenever this damn show comes out. But by and large, it'll basically be Tuesdays will be recap of the week that was for the NFL. And then Thursdays will pretty much be preview day. We'll be very much focused on the NFL here up until the bowl games start kicking off and we get into the meat of the bowl season schedule. Until then, this will be, you gotta savor this. This will be the last college football episode for a little bit here. But I'm be honest with y'all. I am just dead. I am completely dead inside. Just got off of a 10-hour shift at my job. And I'm dead inside. I'm dying slowly. Just looking forward to that overtime that I'm inevitably going to get when this whole thing is all said and done. Until then, though, I'm just, slowly dying inside. What else is new? That being said, though, that is all to say, though, is what I'm trying to say, but my brain is just utter mush right now. I'm sure whenever I get up, my body is going to be screaming at me. Hell, I might pop both Achilles. We'll have to see what happens whenever I get up out of this chair. But for now, all of that is to say, I'm going to try and keep this one short and sweet. Not a whole lot of games to get to, just a little bit of controversy when it comes to the final playoff bracket, if you will. And without any further ado, let's get straight into this thing. We'll start with the games, and then we'll go on to the playoff bracket. We'll just go chronologically here. No jump transition. I will take a quick, giant gulp of this caffeine so I can get through this, but then we'll get straight into it afterwards, all right? That was like 3 or 4 gulps, so, I'm a liar. Hope you like that. That's just some disgusting gas coming from my mouth hole there. I think I'm ready to go get into this thing. So we'll just go chronologically here. Starting off on Friday, Oregon versus Washington. I think everyone kind of had a idea of how this was going to go. Vegas certainly had an idea of how this was going to go. Oregon was minus 9.5 a favorite coming into this game. And Washington, presumed for dead. I personally thought Oregon would win this game. I told friends at work as much that Oregon would win this game. And you know what? Vegas, me, many of the experts in college football, we were all wrong because Washington was just that team on Friday night. Honestly, Oregon scored a touchdown late to make it closer. But, I mean, basically it was a 14-0 run in the fourth quarter that, Oregon made it interesting late. Outside of that, I mean, this was a really big game for Washington, obviously. I mean, they won the game. Ultimately, we knew at this point they punched their ticket to the college football playoff, but they get to win 34-31. Dylan Johnson, gotta love what he's doing with Washington, man. I mean, he was the bell cow for this team. 28 carries, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground in this game. And hey, big change up from what he had over there at Mississippi State, because they only threw to him once, he only caught the ball once for like 7 yards. So big time game for Dillon Johnson. I mean, Jalen McMillan and Rome Odunze were fantastic as per usual. Jalen Polk was back in the lineup as well, being damn good. Michael Penix, he's not going to get any serious Heisman consideration from anyone worth respecting, and certainly not people who should have a job, not a job, a vote for the Heisman. But he did a hell of a job in this one. I mean, over 300 yards, over 8 yards per attempt, a touchdown, an interception versus a really, really solid Oregon defense. I think that's probably the best defense they faced all year, quite frankly. All due respect to Utah, but Oregon's just on a different level in that way. And yeah, I mean, credit where it's due. They absolutely earned this thing. And by the way, Dillon Johnson passing touchdown as well. How about that? I must have missed that somewhere along the way. That didn't readily come up in my memory, but man, as a Mississippi State fan, you have got to be. If you're salty about Dillon Johnson leaving at this point, take a long look in the mirror, because even if we had Dillon Johnson on the team, we still wouldn't be going to a bowl, folks. We would still be a shit team. I am just happy to see that Dillon Johnson went to a situation where, unfortunately, it took a season-ending injury for the guy above him in the depth chart to get this opportunity, but he is a legit bell cow on a possible national championship contender, the 2 seed in the playoff bracket when it was all said and done. I hope I'm not spoiling anything for anyone. But yeah, love to see Dillon Johnson succeeding, and I'm just glad after he left Mississippi State, he not only landed on his feet with a legitimate contender. So yeah, nothing but happy wishes and good tidings to Dillon Johnson. Hope for nothing but success from here on out. And hopefully this translates into some good draft stock. I think he definitely improved his draft stock by going to Washington this year. Still not sure how high he'll be drafted, especially in today's running back market. But good to see Dillon Johnson out there and making a huge impact for somebody. On the Oregon side of things, though, this seems like a movie we've seen before. They're always kind of in it till the very end of the season. Then they just kind of fumble it down the stretch. This time, we thought they had it all the way up until the very last moment, until Washington just snatched their hearts straight out of their chests. Bo Nix, not a terrible game overall. I mean, 3 touchdowns, had 11.5 yards per carry on the ground, but ultimately just not enough to win the game, and that's... I don't know if it should be held against him in the Heisman voting, but ultimately, if he would have won this game with that performance, I think he may have won the Heisman. Since he did not win this game, I think Jayden Daniels has got this thing in the bag. I think if Jayden Daniels isn't minus money to win the Heisman right now, he absolutely should be, and that's a damn surefire bet. If you get plus money on Jayden Daniels right now, you might as well go ahead and take that, unless the old idiots outnumber the smart people and Michael Penix gets it. But I think Bo Nix probably fell out of the race, unfortunately, and truly through no fault of his own. I mean, had a hell of a performance still in this game versus a solid rival opponent, but just not quite enough. The Ducks fall by the wayside, and they fall well short of the playoff. Washington, on the other hand, punches their ticket. So outside of that, we have got, I mean, Liberty versus New Mexico State. Cool. Liberty was 13-0. Fun fact, out of 133 teams in the FBS, though, they had the dead last strength of schedule. So cool, good stuff there. But hey, Liberty finishes the regular season 13-0. And if if this were the 12-team model, Liberty would be one of the automatic bids for the 12-team playoff. And yeah, I bet we're all really looking forward to seeing Liberty go in there against, I guess, I don't want to give anything away, but against a Florida State or something, if there were the 12-team playoff, and get the doors blown off them, because that's exactly what would happen. But yeah, this is the model you all chose. So good for you. Good for you guys. Glad you got exactly what you wanted. Should be a fun road to hoe from here. I'm going to hop off my soapbox, though, before I get too passionate about it. We all know where I stand on that whole thing. It's rinky-dink, it's Mickey Mouse, and I hate it. But we move on from there. On Saturday, obviously, we had a couple big-time games. First and foremost, not the first chronologically, but the first on the ranking sheet, and the most important game, the best game of the day on Saturday, Georgia versus Alabama. On the very first possession for Georgia, I'm fairly certain they went right down the field and scored a touchdown. After that, they went absolutely quiet up until the very last minute of the game, pretty much. Alabama dominated this one. They came out there. After the first quarter, it looked a little bit shaky. They got 2 quick touchdowns in the second quarter, and it was pretty much, I wasn't over from there, but it was pretty well settled from there. Georgia needed like a late touchdown where they just went straight down the field late in the game to kind of make this thing close, but Jalen Milroe put this thing away with his legs. I had a long run at the end in order to seal this thing, and that's kind of the story of the season. He did most of his work with his legs. Didn't look pretty numbers wise. I mean, ultimately only 29 yards rushing, 2.1 yards per attempt. Obviously that factors in sacks as well, but you get it. But passing, I mean, 8.3 yards per attempt. 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers for that matter, which is simply not what Jalen Milroe did throughout the course of this season. And then on the other side, you had Carson Beck going for 243. Didn't make the crucial mistake. Just had the one lost fumble, which I guess you could consider a crucial mistake for sure. But didn't turn the ball over. Didn't throw a touchdown though. At the same, well, didn't throw an interception. Sorry, again, my brain is mush from working so much, but I digress. Didn't throw a touchdown. Didn't throw an interception. Was just kind of there. This is one of those. I mean, two straight weeks in a row where Carson Beck had a bad game, and this time it cost him a trip to the playoff, unfortunately, and that's how razor thin the margins were in this year. Is if they didn't win this game, they weren't going to the playoff. I thought a couple weeks ago that if Georgia, Georgia might be in no matter what. But that was before we got the results we did throughout the last 2 weeks. And it got down to the end, and there is legitimately 6 or 7 teams that were kind of deserving, and only 4 spots. So there are going to be some teams that were disappointed. Obviously, one is more disappointed than all of the other ones for sure. Again, we'll talk about that in a bit. But Alabama getting the win in this one, and it kind of planted the seeds that we would see come to fruition on Sunday of, okay, Alabama just got the best win in the country. They are 3-1 versus the current top 25 in the college football playoff rankings. They're playing outside of the Auburn game better than just about anyone else in the country. This is a completely different team than the one that lost to Texas. This is, between them and Florida State, who doesn't have their starting quarterback, this is where you start seeing, okay, I think the committee at this point, after Alabama won this game, was like, okay, please make this easy and let Florida State lose in the ACC championship versus Louisville. No one's going to come out and outright say that, but I think at this point, they're like, just please make this an easy decision for me. Make it an easy decision where I can just put in Alabama and not have to worry about it. Unfortunately, that is not what happened at all. We'll get to that there in just a minute. First, though, let's hit the other conference title games real quick. SMU beat Tulane 26-14. We won money on that. You're welcome, folks. Texas beat the piss out of Oklahoma State. I mean, beat the holy hell out of Oklahoma State. They set the total yardage record for the Big 12 title game. Quinn Ewers had damn near 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in the first half. It was utter domination from start to finish, and Oklahoma State never stood a chance, quite frankly. Texas came out there. They knew exactly what they needed to do. They needed to win. They needed to win in the most impressive fashion. Not only to get a playoff spot, but to hold off Bama and to keep people keep people like me, Jesus Christ, I can't talk right now, keep people like me from coming out there and saying, hey, Alabama is a better team than Texas right now. I don't think that anymore. I think they're a pretty well equal team, and honestly might be on a collision course there and in the national title game, but this absolutely punched their ticket to the playoff, no question about it. Texas looked clearly better than the competition. And the way they won versus Oklahoma State, it was going to be very, very hard to keep them out of the playoff. They ended up getting the 3, and I think everyone kind of expected that. Michigan, all they really had to do was win, and they were going to get the number 1 seed, and they were going to be in the playoff, and that's exactly what they did. Wasn't pretty, still hit the under. However, they also covered, and I won money off of that. Y'all didn't, unless you bet on your own self, because, I waited a little bit, bided my time. I saw that 21.5. I was like, oh, let me take that real quick. And Michigan won 26-0. I think Iowa might have crossed midfield like once or twice in the entire game. Again, wasn't pretty, was not a fun game to watch by any stretch of the imagination. That's just kind of the Iowa playing their game to a certain extent. But by the end of the game, it was clear. It was utter domination the entire time from the Michigan defense, and Iowa didn't score a point. Still hit the under. They're the under gods this season, but that punched Michigan's ticket to the playoff. They're the number 1 overall seed. So that brings us to the most consequential game left on the schedule for the conference championship slate. It was Louisville. It was Florida State for the ACC title. You already know what I thought. I thought Louisville was going to win. I put money on the fact that I thought Louisville was going to win this game. And that's just not what happened, folks. That Florida State defense is disgusting. I mean, just filthy. Excuse me. They went out there and they utterly dominated Louisville. And Louisville, Jack Plummer turned into a little bit of a pumpkin during this game, and I think he was kind of been buoyed by a cupcake schedule throughout the entire season. There's no shade to Louisville there. We all acknowledged going into the season that this was probably the easiest schedule in all of the ACC this year that Louisville was playing on. And hey, they won a lot of those games. They lost to Pitt, but they won a lot of those games, quite frankly. So you can't fault them. Coming into this game, though, I thought there would be a few more points scored by Louisville, which is why I thought they would end up winning this game. But man, Jared Verse, Fentrell Cypress, that entire defensive unit for Florida State just played out of their minds in this one. They did nothing short of dominate the Louisville Cardinals in this game. Jack Plummer was bad and somehow better than all of the QBs for Florida State. However, the QBs for Florida State did end up winning the game 16-6. And I say QBs, it was just one. It was a redshirt freshman, I believe, Brock Glenn. Tate Rodemaker was out for this one. I think he had a concussion or something like that. So Brock Glenn comes in. He throws for a robust 55 yards on 8 of 21 completions. Good thing he got Lawrence Toafili in the backfield, 118 yards on 10 carries and a touchdown. That was ultimately the difference. The Florida State Seminoles scored the only touchdown in this game, and that ended up being the difference, 16-6. I feel like there's some interest. Get this defensive stat line for the Florida State Seminoles. First off, as a team, they got 7 sacks and 14 tackles for loss. Also, 10 passes defensed, which is more than double. Here's the thing. They had about triple the sacks, double the tackles for loss, and more than double the passes defensed than what Louisville had. And Louisville had a good defensive game in this one. Don't get me wrong. They played a hell of a game. But that's just how dominant Florida State was. Braden Fisk, big defensive lineman there in the middle. He got 3 sacks in this game, 4.5 tackles for loss. Jared Verse, the guy I just talked about, he'll be a first-round pick this year, no question about it. If there weren't so many quarterbacks at the top, good chance he is a top 10 pick. We'll see where he ends up going. But he ended up with 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss in this game. Fabian Lovett got in the action with a sack. You just had players all over the place. Patrick Payton with a sack and 2 tackles for loss. You're just getting contributions all over the damn place, and it was a masterclass of defense from the Florida State Seminoles, and they didn't make it easy for the committee. They get their 13th win. They get the ACC title win. They do not look impressive doing so, at least not offensively, but a win is a win, which created a dilemma. for the college football playoff committee. Like I said, they were hoping to God that Florida State would lose this game to make the decision easy. But as it was, there were three teams that were clearly in, right? You had Michigan at 1, Washington at 2. That's clear right there. I mean, they were already undefeated. They don't have any extenuating injury circumstances. They've been impressive all year. So they were in no matter what, and they were obviously the top 2 seeds. Then Texas, with how they performed on Saturday, you could not keep them out. They looked entirely too dominant. They were way too damn good, and ultimately they got the 3 seed, which, you know, honoring that head-to-head with Alabama makes a lot of sense, especially when Texas was so impressive on that Big 12 championship game. So, really, you think about the one-loss teams. Ohio State, not a snowball's chance in hell. They didn't even play in a conference title game, and at this point, when you're splitting hairs like this, that shit matters. It's not like previous years where you're trying to just like find 4 teams that are deserving. This year there were a litany of teams that had a viable case to get in, and only one could for that 4th spot. So Ohio State out of it. Georgia, they were the number 1 team coming in, but ultimately with Florida State winning, with Alabama beating them, and now Alabama having the exact same record as Georgia with that head-to-head win, obviously, they weren't going to get in over Alabama. And with Florida State right there, being a conference champion, couldn't really get in over them too. So it was Georgia at number 5. And then we got down to the nitty-gritty. The debate that captivated all of college football for, I mean, I think it's still captivating all of college football after it was fully settled by the committee. Florida State or Alabama. And the fact of the matter is, both teams had a really good argument to make it, man. Alabama obviously playing better. I'd say a better team right now than what Florida State is. But Florida State, all they did was win all their games, run through the ACC, got a dominant defense. The only thing that's really wrong is that they don't have their starting quarterback. Jesus Christ. How did I forget this guy's name? Jordan Travis. My goodness. I always keep wanting to call him Travis Rudolph. I don't know why. I want to call him Travis Rudolph, but no, it's Jordan Travis. So, yeah, without him in there, to me, and this is just to me, obviously, good people disagree on this sort of thing. To me, I thought it was clear that, okay, you're going to get blowback no matter who you choose, whether it be if you choose Alabama, obviously the Florida State crowd and all the people that say that, you know, they won their conference, the regular season games have to matter, all that good stuff. They would say, okay, why didn't Florida State get in? They didn't get in over a one-loss also conference champion. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So yeah, they have a gripe, and if you didn't put Alabama in, Alabama fans would be up in arms too. Like, okay, we just ran through the best conference in the nation. We have the best win in the entire country against Georgia. We basically, I mean, went 3-1 against the current top 25 right now. The hottest team in the country, out excluding the Auburn game. We have a legitimate right. If you're trying to put in the quote-unquote 4 best teams, which is what the committee purports to do, you got to put in Alabama there. And the tough part is, both of those fan bases are right. I mean, they're absolutely right, which is what made this so difficult. But ultimately, the committee came down to it, and I think they made the decision that made for the best games in the college football playoff, the most competitive college football playoff, and that was to put Alabama at number 4 and Florida State at number 5. They keep out 13-0 Florida State, the ACC champion. Did not lose a single game. All they did wrong was their quarterback snapped his leg in half. That's pretty much it. Brutal way for Florida State to go out on the season. But as it is, looking at the playoff itself, we'll get back to Florida State in just a minute because that's how I'm going to kind of close this thing out. Looking at the 4 itself, Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama, I think this is probably the most even field that we had in the 4-team playoff era, and it's It's a good way to end off the 4-team era. I think it's going to be the most entertaining semifinals and finals games of the entire 10-year run that we've had going on now. I really like what they did. I mean, it's hard to say I really like it. I honestly, my philosophy here was, okay, you're going to piss someone off no matter what you do. It's just the nature of the game in this year in a 4-team playoff. There is well more than 4 teams that deserve to get in this year. Certainly there were 2 that really actually had a legitimate gripe if they were to miss. You're going to piss someone off no matter what. In that situation where someone is going to be mad no matter what, that is a constant, no matter what you decide, I think you prioritize what would be the best games, and I think they did that to a T with the College Football Playoff Committee. So, full disclosure, I absolutely thought that Alabama should get in. Even before the committee made the decision, I thought just, if you're trying to put in the best 4 teams, and it's, I was thinking about this earlier today too. It's not just like, it's not so black and white where it's like, oh, are you just doing like a Vegas power rating? Like who would be favored where? Hey, if that's the case, put in Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Texas. Hey, throw in Ohio State too. That's not exactly what we're doing here though. And it's not really necessarily the 4 most deserving teams either. Like it's, because if the 4 most quote-unquote deserving teams were in there, Florida State would absolutely be in there. It's a healthy in-between, right? Like on one hand, you do want to, if you can, get most deserving teams in there. But if there's like incredible extenuating circumstances like Florida State has not having Jordan Travis out there, and there's a team like Alabama who absolutely has the resume. I mean, you can quibble all you want. The 1 loss is what it is. That 1 loss was also to a playoff team. They lost to Texas early on in the season. Not only did they lose to Texas early on in the season, that's a completely different team than what they were at the end of the year. After that game they lost against Texas, they've done nothing but improve all throughout the end of the season. They went through the toughest conference in the entire nation. You can quibble about that all you want. It's certainly much more difficult to go through the SEC undefeated than it is to go through the ACC undefeated. You can just go back through the record of teams that Florida has played, or really Florida State has played. Really just go through the ACC. Yes, they played LSU early on in the season. I'll get to those early season marquee matchups here in just a second, but just to kind of put a bow on the playoff thing. When you have a team like Alabama who has a legitimately great resume in their own right, they have that 1 less win, that 1 more loss on their resume, but they're also a conference champion. They won a harder conference. They played harder teams at the end of the day. I think it's easier for the committee, especially with the extenuating circumstances of Jordan Travis, to go ahead and put Alabama in over Florida State. And I understand people aren't going to like it. People are, saying, does the regular season even matter? All that sort of stuff, which is kind of a straw man argument. And I don't want to besmirch the good name of people. But listen, if you just look at this thing objectively, and you look at the SEC versus the ACC, and understand what it took for Alabama to just go 12-1 this season after losing that early game to Texas, and then look at the slate that Florida State faced after beating LSU in week 1, I think we can both clearly see which one had the harder road to hoe. And I think we can clearly see if we put it. And here's the thing. If Jordan Travis was in there and Florida State goes 13-0, they would have blown Louisville out, quite frankly, if Jordan Travis was in there. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now because Florida State would be clearly the number 4 team in the country. They would be a playoff team. And who's to say what happens from there? If Jordan Travis is in there, they're absolutely a playoff team. No question about it in my mind. But without Jordan Travis in there, I think it's pretty clear to me that Alabama was a better football team. And I don't think it was particularly close because if Florida State, again, if Jordan Travis was in there, that would have made the resumes close enough. And even with the weaker conference in the ACC, they're a Power 5 conference champion for whatever that means nowadays. I think that definition is going to shift pretty precipitously over the course of the next year or so. Developing story, more details to follow in the next, again, year or so. But if the resumes were even like close, quite frankly, and the teams were playing at a fairly comparable level, I think they put in Florida State. I think they would have rather put in Florida State if they had Jordan Travis in there. But the fact of the matter is, they didn't. And since they didn't have Jordan Travis, you get what you had now. And like I said, ultimately, I think the committee made the right decision because it's going to result in the best football games. And I think this is going to be the best playoff, just from quality of game standpoint, on record. I really love what they ended up with at the end of the day. I hate that it had to come at the expense of Florida State. And the tough part about this is you're right. You're right, Florida State fans. You probably should have gotten in. And been basically every other year up until this point, Florida State with that resume would have gotten into the playoff. The fact of the matter is it was just so cutthroat at the top of the standings this year. Someone was going to be disappointed no matter what. Absolutely, someone was going to be disappointed no matter what. So it sucks for Florida State. I can't stress that enough. This absolutely blows for Florida State. But on the other hand, I do think the committee made the right decision. I think they made the decision that led to the best games overall. So I'm perfectly fine with it. I thought it was the way to go. But this does also it would have been less of a conversation if Alabama didn't end up getting into the college football playoff. But I'll bring it to the fore now. People are kind of questioning like what the merit of scheduling these marquee out-of-conference games is, especially early in the season. And I think I agree with people halfway there. I think early on in the season, these marquee games are basically useless. Because the fact of the matter is, if Texas won the Big 12, but they did so in like unconvincing fact. Like say they won 28-21 or something, or 28-24, God forbid, in the Pac in the Big 12 title game, and Bama did exactly what they did against Georgia. I think Bama probably, and they had to like choose between Texas and Florida State or something like that. I think they still. There's a lot of what ifs here, so we'll plug this into the hypothetical machine here, but. Like, if Jordan Travis was still in there, and it was between Texas and Florida State, if Texas only won by, like, say, 4 points, in the Big 12 championship game, I think Alabama ends up jumping Texas and gets into the playoff just because that head-to-head early on in the season doesn't necessarily matter. And I'll tell you why it doesn't necessarily matter. And yes, the results on the field do matter. I'm not discounting that. The problem is, especially with a college team, who teams are and their identities are so fluid, much more at the college level than they are at the pro level. At the pro level, again, it's in the name. They're pros. They're it's their job to come out there and be at the top of their game every single time out there. In college, you're dealing with 18 to 22 year olds, 18 to 25 year olds in some circumstances that. In that age range, we've all been that age before, and if you aren't that age, you're going to be that age at some point. We've all been that age, and I think we can all admit to ourselves, 18 to 24-year-olds are just inherently unreliable people. I mean, just people that you can't necessarily trust to come out there and give their best every single time out there, and especially early on in the season, teams are kind of gelling. They're a work in progress. We're not sure exactly what they're going to be. Alabama is the case in point for that for sure, because the team that Texas played in September in Tuscaloosa is not the team that Georgia played in Atlanta in the SEC championship in this last week. They are completely different. By the end of the season, Alabama was definitely one of the 4 best teams in the entire nation. And granted, Texas was still kind of on that level too. They went through some trials and tribulations with Quinn Ewers getting hurt throughout the season and stuff like that. But early on in the season, those games matter less because again, those teams are not finished products. So my solution to this is do not get rid of the marquee games. I mean, the marquee games are good for college football. They're great for TV. We love it. Everyone loves to see great teams from across the country in different geographical footprints, in different conferences going against each other, because you don't often get to see those sorts of things. Like the Oregon versus Georgia matchup, whenever they were doing that. I mean, obviously Florida State versus LSU. That's just good TV, right? Texas versus Alabama, for that matter. Just great TV, quite frankly. The problem is, early on in the season, if you want these games to matter, don't put them early in the season. especially if they're SEC teams. Every single SEC team out there has a week right before rivalry week that we call the tune-up week, where you're playing like a Southern Miss or someone like that, a Mercer, someone that really is just an FCS team coming in for a paycheck. I propose in that off week before rivalry week, you bump out those smaller schools, bump that to the beginning of the season. We can all live with one more week of bad football. We get it, pretty much constantly at the beginning of the college football season anyway, so why not stack one more game over there? And instead of having that tune-up week, why don't we have an out-of-conference sort of, not rivalry, but out-of-conference marquee matchup week? I think, hey, think about if Arizona played Mississippi State, which I would not like, at the end of the season. Arizona would run Mississippi State off the field, and they would have been 10-2 instead of 9-3 this year. And not only that, it benefits some teams like that as well. But when you're looking at playoff resumes, it is a damn fact that games in November matter exponentially more than games that were played in September when it's all said and done. So, again, my solution: you put the pity bowls up front, you put the cupcake opponents up front, and then you backload your schedule with games that matter. Don't get rid of these marquee out of market or out of conference games. Move them to late in the season where you're actually getting a full, clear picture of what each of these teams are and what they are against each other. That will, trust me, in the eyes of the committee, that will go a long way in not being able to discount quote-unquote regular season results like you're seeing in some of these cases with early season matchups, because like I said, and this will be the last time I say it, the early season matchups, you're not playing the same team that you will be playing late in the season. So just my 2 cents there. I think it would help everyone involved if they just move those games later on in the year. Let's get a time check. Like 36 minutes. My goodness, this is going to be like a record short sort of episode this time around. Let me get a quick drink though here. Yup, good times. Get a quick check of the phone, make sure I'm not missing anything. Nope, missing not a damn thing. So yeah, there you go. There is the results from championship week, and with that all in the books, we'll go over the playoff bracket one more time in case somehow you forgot. Michigan at 1, Washington at 2, Texas at 3, Alabama at 4, which means Michigan is playing Alabama in the first round. Washington is playing Texas in the first round. And early projections, I think it's going to be a Bama-Texas title game with, I don't know who's going to win if we get a Bama-Texas rematch in the title game. That will be just high-class television that I hope we all get to see when it's all said and done. I think those are the two teams that are playing the absolute best right now. I could see Washington coming out there, especially with Michael Penix and those dynamic receivers that they got over there at Washington. I could see them coming out, making some noise and beating Texas in the semifinal. The problem is they're playing down in New Orleans, I'm pretty sure. So absolutely going to be a pseudo home game for the Texas Longhorns in that one, especially with Washington traveling across the country to get there. It's going to be a very orange crowd, very burnt orange crowd down there in New Orleans. So I think that definitely favors Texas. I believe Michigan and Alabama are playing at the Rose Bowl, so true neutral site game on that one. It's going to be a dandy, though, man. It's, like I said, this is probably the best 4-team playoff as far as competitive balance-wise that I think we may have ever had in the 4-team era. A hell of a way to send it off. I just hope the games live up to the hype, because right now, boy, I'm feeling very excited to see where this goes. RIP to Florida State. That being said, though, we got the bowl season all set and ready to go. And yes, bowl season has kind of lost its luster from what we saw before. A lot of players opting out nowadays, which, hey, I get it. Go. Don't want to jeopardize your money or anything like that. I understand. Maybe if you're a 5th round pick though, or something like that, maybe you just want to play in the damn game. Maybe you want to put out some good tape for the next level. I don't know. Just a me thing. But even with that being said, we got some good bowl game matchups here. So let's just kind of go down the list and see what we can find. Obviously, already went over the playoff matchups, so don't have to beat that dead horse. But let's look at the New Year's Six. First off, in the what's the Cotton Bowl, we have got Missouri versus Ohio State. Obviously, like I said before, Ohio State going to be without Kyle McCord, so that's going to be an interesting matchup there. But I think, hey, outside of that, I mean, you got we'll have to see who opts in and opts out. That's the tough part of this whole thing. But I think that should be a good matchup between Missouri and Ohio State, and a real opportunity for Missouri to come out there and end off on a good note. Ohio State, on the other hand, feels like they're going to have a lot of opt-outs for the NFL draft. I don't blame them there, but feels like a big opportunity for Missouri to come out there and grab that game by the balls. Peach Bowl, Ole Miss versus Penn State. Penn State, I think, will have a lot of players playing. I think some key defenders will probably not be there. We'll have to see about Olu Fashanu, probably a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, maybe even a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. A dynamic tackle over there for Penn State. But again, a contrast of styles between Ole Miss and Penn State in this one. We'll have to see who ends up controlling the game. It kind of probably all comes down to what Penn State defenders are in on this one and which ones are out. But we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see on that one. I think Ole Miss is going to have a full complement of offensive weapons, so they're going to have their hands full over there with the Peach Bowl. Orange Bowl, we got Georgia versus Florida State, and I have a sneaking suspicion that Georgia is going to come out here and use this game as a tune-up for next year. And quick preview, I'm calling this a full year in advance. I think Georgia's going to win the 2025 national championship. They got Carson Beck most likely coming back. He can come out for the draft this year, but I don't think it would be a good idea after 1 year of tape out there. He would do very well with staying one more year at Georgia, and I think they're going to pay him handsomely to do so. So why not stay one more year? Obviously, Brock Bowers probably not going to be playing in this game, but I think you're going to be having a lot of weapons out there. Still the offensive line, the defense is what it is, and I think Kirby Smart is pissed off that he did not get into the college football playoff after being number one going into the final week of the season and carrying like a 28-29 game winning streak going into the final week of the season. I got a sneaking suspicion that Georgia's going to run Florida State off of the damn field. There's a chance they may win by 40 in this one, just out of pure frustration. On the other hand, though, Florida State, man, they're going to be extra motivated as well, because if they win this one and they go to 14-0, they're going to be able to shove that straight into the committee's faces. So I'm leaning towards Georgia blowing out Florida State. I'm not entirely sure on that, though. But I think that may be the best game of the slate that I've mentioned so far. I think that's going to be a really good one on not New Year's Eve, but the day before New Year's Eve, December 30th. Fiesta Bowl, we got Liberty versus Oregon. Oregon probably without Bo Nix in this one, which makes it interesting. Ultimately, I think Dan Lanning is going to take out some aggression in this one, even without probably Bucky Irving as well. I have a feeling that Oregon is going to run Liberty off the field as well. That being said, unlike the Georgia versus Florida State game, I think the Vegas line is going to reflect my feeling on that one. I think Oregon's going to be a heavy favorite in the Fiesta Bowl versus Liberty. Outside of that, got to kind of scroll through these bowls, see if we find anything that we like here. In the LA Bowl, we got UCLA versus Boise State. That's a nice little matchup there. Boise State getting a new head coach in there. I think the interim might have been hired in that situation, which always works out well. When has that ever not worked out well? Also, UCLA, what do they look like without having Dante Moore in there? We'll have to wait and see, but that could be an interesting game. Cal versus Texas Tech. I don't even know why I read that one. Who cares? What else we got? UTSA versus Marshall. Two sneaky good teams there as well. But I don't really know any players from either of those teams. I just know they're both sneaky good. My goodness, they're both sneaky good. So, worth paying attention to, I suppose. Troy versus Duke. I check the line on this one. It's on December 23rd. That may be one I'm betting. I think Troy ends up winning that one and winning that one comfortably. I like the Troy Trojans in that game, especially with somehow John Summerall not being picked up in this last coaching hiring cycle. No idea how. I think Troy's going to come in there focused and ready to go, though. I think they're going to run Duke off the field in that game. That may be one we look ahead to and place a healthy wager on. The Armed Forces Bowl, JMU, the Dukes, they're being allowed to go bowling because there weren't enough eligible teams, so we got JMU versus the Armed Forces, Air Force to be exact. A really solid matchup, actually. Definitely a contrast of styles, but I'm happy for JMU getting here. Obviously, they lost their head coach, Curt Cignetti, which, by the way, that is that's something that I did not talk about. And I'm glad I thought about it now, because I would have totally just went through this whole thing and not mentioned it one single time. But we had some coaching stuff going on. There's a lot of opportunities being taken advantage of by some of these coaches. A lot of hires going on. So let me just go through a couple here. Just taking a break from the bowl schedule. Obviously for JMU. Curt Cignetti, their head coach, the guy that's really brought them to these heights here recently, he was hired away by Indiana, who fired Tom Allen. He'll be the new head coach at Indiana. He's talking all sorts of wild shit like Ohio State and Michigan suck, Purdue sucks too, all that sort of stuff, yada, yada, yada. He'll be humbled very quickly. I mean, that's to say the least. I think he'll do a good job there at Indiana in the long run, but got a good feeling he'll be humbled very quickly over there. But good hire there for Indiana over there. Arkansas, they hired Bobby Petrino as their next offensive coordinator. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. I vote that he should wear the neck brace and have the red road rash face on the sidelines every single Saturday, because that's, go look that story up, kids, if you don't remember that one. That's a classic. That's an absolute classic SEC scumbag story right there. And ultimately got Bobby Petrino fired, and a rule passed at Arkansas that they couldn't hire former employees. Funny how that thing just kind of went away in order to get a quality offensive coordinator in there. That shows you what lengths that SEC teams will go to win. Also, by the way, Sam Pittman thought he might be fired after this year. I think there's a good chance that Bobby Petrino is the head coach in waiting there if Sam Pittman gets fired this offseason, this next season as well. So keep an eye on that. Hilarious that Bobby Petrino is back at Arkansas, though. Poetically fitting, but hilarious nonetheless. Colorado's offensive coordinator, Sean Lewis, he was the head coach at Kent State last season. Took the offensive coordinator job at Colorado to parlay it into a better head coaching job, and ultimately, it's exactly what he did. Goes over to San Diego State and will be the head coach there as well. Brings a high-flying offense. I thought Coach Prime kind of did him a little bit dirty down the stretch of this season. Scapegoated him for a lot of the shortcomings of the offensive personnel at Colorado. Weird stuff going on at Colorado, by the way. It's 4-8 is good. The way they did it and how it's kind of shaping out in the offseason, I don't necessarily love so much. So that's going to be interesting situation to watch over there in Colorado. Will they get better next season? Who's to say? Their recruiting class not exactly rounding into shape right now. So they're going to have to do a lot of work in the portal, and we saw how that worked out last season. We'll have to wait and see on that. Good hire for San Diego State, though, to get Sean Lewis out of Colorado. Syracuse hired University of Georgia's defensive backs coach Fran Brown to be their next head coach. Kind of a young up-and-comer. Don't know much about him, but he's thought highly of, so I think it could end up being a good hire for him. Obviously, a defensive-minded head coach, and I think this might be his first head coaching opportunity, so we'll have to wait and see what he looks like there. But ultimately, I think good hire there for Syracuse. And last headline here I have got for the coaching. Houston, there was some rumblings about Cliff Kingsbury maybe going there, but ultimately I think they made the right choice. They went over to Tulane. They get Willie Fritz as their next head coach, and Willie Fritz has won basically everywhere he has gone. So I I love that hire. I think after all of the will they, won't they with Cliff Kingsbury, they ended up with the right dude in Willie Fritz. I think Willie Fritz is going to do good things there at Houston. So there you go. That's the head coaching news as I remember seeing it. I'm just going off of what Pete Thamel says. So I'm nothing if not loyal to the Pete Thamels of the world. Well, that being said, let's keep going down the list of bowls here. Kind of just did a quick interruption there on that one. Got Utah versus Northwestern. That's going to be a rock fight, but hey, could be interesting. Coastal Carolina and San Jose State get a free trip to Hawaii. That's pretty cool. Actually, no. It's the Easy Post Hawaii Bowl played in Las Vegas. So, still got a free trip to Las Vegas. Well, I think Las Vegas might be more fun in some ways than Hawaii, but a free trip to Hawaii would be pretty cool as well. I don't know. Might be a little bit biased on that front, but it is what it is. What else we got? Kansas versus UNLV. That's that's a game. That's a game. I think could be a high scoring one there as well. We'll just have to wait and see. That one's on the 26th. Last game on the 26th of December. The Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Who doesn't want to go to the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, folks? That's the pinnacle of college football. Outside of that, North Carolina versus West Virginia. North Carolina is going to be without Drake May. I think that could be a sneaky good spot for West Virginia. I think they got a really good chance of winning that one. We'll have to see what the line is, but I like that game. I like that game a lot. Another game that I might be on, both these games are on Wednesday the 27th. Louisville is playing USC. I think Louisville's just going to have more players playing. And obviously, Caleb Williams, we already know he's sitting out the bowl. He's going to be the number one overall pick. Kind of expected this coming, so he won't be there. We all knew that. And without Caleb Williams, that is a sad football team. So Louisville could be in line to get a big bowl win there. That's going to be. I'm perusing the betting market as we go, if you haven't noticed. So I'm taking mental note of that one. Got Texas A&M versus Oklahoma State. I don't have a great feel on that one. I think it's going to be a good game, though. The Tax Act Texas Bowl there. Last game on the 27th. A lot of good slate on the 27th, man. There's some good games out there, I think, that are going to end up being entertaining, even with the opt-outs that inevitably come along the way. Outside of that, we got the Bad Boy Motors Pinstripe Bowl down there in Fenway Park in Boston. We got Rutgers versus... No. Sorry, my bad. New York, my bad. Don't crucify me, you stupid baseball fans. But Rutgers versus Miami. That's the Bad Boy Motors Pinstripe Bowl. That is Yankee Stadium. I thought that was a little bit weird that the Pinstripe Bowl would be in Fenway. But here we are. We rectified it eventually. I'll be at 2:15 on Thursday the 28th. With Rutgers playing against Miami. Tyler Van Dyke already in the portal. Rutgers having a good season, good bounce back season for Greg Schiano over there with Rutgers. Could be interesting. Good names in that game. If nothing else. We got NC State, sneaky good NC State team versus actually a big time game in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. This is going to be the first edible mascot of any bowl game of all time, basically. So the winner is just going to get a mouthful of Pop-Tart in this one, and we got a dandy, folks. NC State versus Kansas State. I believe this will be the first time that who's that Kansas State QB? Not Will Howard. Will Howard already enters his name into the transfer portal. Hot name in the transfer portal, by the way, too. I mean, a really, really good quarterback out there for the taking for somebody. I forget the guy's name. The backup quarterback there who was kind of flirting with the starting job all throughout the year for Kansas State. Name escapes me. I don't know. It's his show going forward, though. I apologize for not remembering that man's name. But NC State, Kansas State, I think it's going to end up being a good game. And if it's not, I would assume Kansas State blew out NC State at the end of the day. So Pop-Tarts Bowl on my list of games to watch. I want to talk about another game that's going to be fun. And it kind of depends a lot on the quarterback situation here. But the Alamo Bowl this year, we got Arizona versus Oklahoma. Are you kidding me? And Arizona's starting a true freshman quarterback, baby. Noah Fafita will be playing in this game no matter what. Don't you worry. I got to sneeze real quick. And of course, as I said, it's basically all repressed. So never mind on that. But don't think Dylan Gabriel will be playing for Oklahoma. Could be wrong on that, but I don't think that'll be the case. Probably going to be seeing Jackson Arnold in the game first. First live looks at Jackson Arnold, I would imagine. A really hot Arizona team with a lot of core players that are going to be playing versus a solid Oklahoma team as well. I think that Alamo Bowl is going to be an absolute banger. And I think, honestly, heavily leaning towards Arizona. I think that having Noah Fafita in there is going to make a big-time difference for Arizona, and I think they get their 10th win of the season in that one. But that Alamo Bowl, watch out for that one. That's going to be a fun game. 9 p.m. On ESPN on Thursday, the 28th of December. What else we got? Clemson versus Kentucky? Sure, whatever. Oregon State versus Notre Dame. Lost a lot of luster after the quarterback entered the transfer portal for Oregon State, and their head coach got poached by Michigan State. So I expect Notre Dame to win that one. Though that being said, they're probably not going to have Sam Hartman in that one either. So we'll have to wait and see. Memphis versus Iowa State in the Liberty Bowl. I suppose I'll lean Iowa State. Who's to say? Outside of that, Wisconsin versus LSU. Probably going to be a shell of their former self there. Iowa versus Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl. I bet the under on that one. I'll say that much. I don't know who's going to be starting at quarterback. I don't know if Joe Milton's going to go one last ride on that one, or if you're going to be seeing Nico Iamaleava, or if they don't want to burn Nico's red shirt and then they'll just go with someone else in that stead. I don't think that one's going to be high scoring at all. I think that's going to be a game that plays right into what Iowa wants to do. And Iowa's got a chance to win in their 11th game of the season, so that's going to be an interesting one. And that'll be one of the last bowls of the season on Monday, January 1. But that's pretty much it. That's the full bowl preview. And we're at like just under an hour, so yeah, let's just cut it there. Like I said, probably the last college football episode for a little bit of time. But thank you so much for tuning in. We had a hell of a season betting wise too. I mean, right now it's not over, by the way. We still got NFL games to bet on. No picks for today, by the way. I worked 10 hours. I had no time whatsoever to go figure out what my gambling picks were going to be. So I'll have a full slate for you on Thursday. What that full slate looks like, I dare not venture a guess, but we'll find out whenever we get there. But yeah, this is probably the last college football episode for a good couple weeks until we get closer to bowl season and playoff time. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, folks. If you enjoyed, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to it, be it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, any place you're listening to it, just hit subscribe. Maybe share it as well. Help me grow this bad boy a little bit. Would be much appreciated. If you want to contact the show and or just want to hear or see my dumb tweets every now and again, follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell that stupid app is called. It's link will be down in the description. It's at Caleb Verzak if you want to try and freehand spell that. Good luck. Also, if you want to contact the show, just shoot me a DM there. It'd probably be the easiest way to do it. Or you can go over to the email unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. Link will be in the description for that as well. So yeah, with that said, thanks so much for tuning in to Unqualified Analysis. As always, I have got zero zip zilch, not a clue what I am talking about. However, one thing I learned this week is that in 2001, the Czech Republic division of Philip Morris conducted a cost-benefit analysis which concluded that tax revenues from the sale of cigarettes outweigh the healthcare costs and early deaths of citizens who died from smoking-related illnesses, i.e., the Czech government benefited from tax revenues and saved money on healthcare from people dying early, and they admitted this in a report. So yeah, there you go. That's fun. That is a fun fact. If my brain was firing on all cylinders, I'd probably have something witty to say after that. But since it's not, you can chew on that information yourself. Just an official report, just cold, calculated reporting from the Czech government on why cigarettes are good for the economy. The people be damned. there you go. Y'all have a good one. I'm gonna go watch some football and edit this thing, I think. See ya.